Hello everyone. Very happy to be here today. My name is Michal. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Fortunet. We're an investment bank focused exclusively on the e-commerce space. And together with me here today is a great panel. And we will discuss the summary for 23 and the outlook for 24 for this industry. That's the last and third session out of a series of webinars that we held for the opening of this year. So hopefully you and us will all enjoy it. Juozas Kaziukėnas, that I prefer to call Joe, is the host of the webinar today. Joe is the founder and CEO of Marketplace Pulse. That's a research company that publishes, I believe, the best blog on e-commerce. Number one. And maybe the rest of the great panel members can present themselves. So we can start with Mike.
Yeah, certainly. Hey, folks. My name is Mike Schmidt. So I have been working in the e-commerce industry for, I'd probably say about 6 or 7 years now. Before that, working in mostly technology. I built and sold 2 companies so far. So first one was in the music space, kind of competing with the streaming services back in 2012, 2011. Got really excited about the world of creators and influencers, jumped into the world of e-commerce via Instagram influencers, TikTok influencers, that type of thing. Built a company called Dovetail.com, sold it to Shopify about 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago. And that's become Shopify Collabs, which is now our in-house first-party affiliate creator management solution for Shopify merchants. So been kind of poking around in the space for quite some time and scaling up a lot of different softwares. But yeah, super excited to talk with the folks here today. So maybe I'll pass it over to Cabilly.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Cabilly Miller. I have a little over 13 years experience in e-commerce and technology. I started my career off in digital anti-piracy and then pivoted to Amazon, where I spent close to 7 years, first leading a team on external relations specific to brand protection and help support the creation of some of the tools that many brand owners use today on Amazon, like brand registry, leveraging feedback from the industry as I developed and built strategic relationships and partnerships to help better educate on those processes and tools. And then I went into product safety and compliance, where I was leading a team dedicated to proactive and preventive controls to protect customers. Within that role, also helped to build some great tools for selling partners, including Manage Your Compliance and Compliance Knowledge Portal. Then I joined TikTok Shop, where I spent a year as head of seller and listing governance, established all of the policies and processes related to seller registration and onboarding, all of the seller governance policies and enforcement processes, and then, of course, all of the product quality, product safety, and compliance processes and requirements for products sold within TikTok Shop. And I recently joined the Redbubble team, where I am Senior Director of Product Quality, Safety, and Compliance.
So, James?
Thank you, Michal. I'm James Thompson. I started at Amazon back in 2007 when Amazon was actually a small company, and had an opportunity to be Amazon's first FBA account manager, trying to sell sellers on the idea that maybe Amazon could do fulfillment better than they could. That was what we call the good old days. I left Amazon several years later and started a firm called Buybox Experts, which was a large Amazon agency. And my business partner and I also started an educational event called Prosper Show. And now I work with brands and investors of brands who are looking to figure out what their e-commerce strategy should look like, whether that's Amazon, whether that's DTC like Shopify, whether that's TikTok, or whether those are other types of channels. So helping brands to think about e-commerce in general. So pleased to be here. Thank you for that opportunity to introduce myself.
And last, but certainly not least, Yael.
Hi, Yael Cabilly. I'm one of the co-founders of Fortunet. Before that, I'm originally an attorney, a trademark attorney. So in about 8 years ago, I founded a law firm that focuses on e-commerce and intellectual property. And then about 5 years ago, Michal and I founded Fortunet, which is an investment bank that helps e-commerce sellers selling the business, whether it's D2C brands, Amazon brands, e-commerce SaaS agencies focused in particular on e-commerce. What about Joe? Joe, present yourself as well. No,
I made it for him. We can start.
Well, I think we're gonna kick off the conversation for today. There are so many different topics to talk about in e-commerce, and so many things happen in a year, and so many of them end up not mattering a couple of years later. So for this webinar, we picked kind of a short list of topics which we think are the most topical last year, and we think are going to be the most kind of important or impactful, or the topics kind of worth paying the most attention to this year for your business, or if you're a seller, if you're a brand, it doesn't even matter. I think to many of us, the most exciting development in this space has been TikTok, both as a social channel, and it's obviously been operating in the US for a few years now, but last year it made a big change by introducing TikTok Shop, and TikTok Shop essentially introduced shopping into TikTok. So 𝐒𝐿𝐴, we obviously saw the launch last year. We also seen Facebook and Instagram try social commerce before, and those attempts really didn't go anywhere. What's unique about TikTok Shop, and why people should pay attention to it?
I think with TikTok Shop, one of the big differentiators when you look at other social commerce ventures, like Instagram and Facebook, one of the biggest distinctions that I've seen is the amount of investment. So TikTok is definitely invested in backing their social commerce strategy. I'm sure many of you have witnessed the outreach and the marketing, and probably even as you're scrolling through TikTok, seeing the shopping opportunities. And it's very clear and obvious that it is being heavily invested in and supported throughout the organization. And I think that makes a big difference. With some of these other social commerce strategies, there's been a little bit of testing, launching new features, rolling things out a little bit more slowly. With TikTok, September of last year came and it was launched, and you were able to, as a seller, onboard, start selling your products. They were visible to customers, and the features and functionality only continued to get better. So that's one big differentiator that I've observed. Also, just the user base. The user base is significant. So there's a huge opportunity to reach customers and be able to achieve higher sales results than you would have anticipated possibly on Facebook or Instagram. And last, the virality possibility is significant. There have been a few different examples where certain products really hit in high popularity, and the amount of impact that has to the brand and their ability to sell on other platforms in addition to TikTok, even direct, is higher. I think the virality factor that TikTok provides represents a significant upside for sellers. Now, the challenge is how to get there, how to get the virality, and that's a whole nother topic, but the opportunity there is huge.
And when we think of TikTok Shop as an e-commerce channel, should we think of it as a replacement for traditional commerce, or as something that complements traditional commerce?
Absolutely not a replacement, especially as it is evolving as a marketplace itself, right? So it's going to continue to evolve and change. Sellers are going to learn how to best take advantage of the tools, the functionality, and just the visibility that it provides for them. So certainly not a replacement. I would leverage TikTok Shop as another avenue of revenue, and it's not for every product and it's not for every seller. I think one of the biggest misperceptions is that you can copy paste your strategy from Amazon to TikTok Shop, and you certainly cannot. There's a big difference in the amount of effort and input required to be able to achieve results that you're looking for within TikTok Shop, specifically related to content. Content on Amazon, you complete the product detail page, perhaps you purchase some ads, but it's essentially done. With TikTok, there is a significant reliance on content and refreshed content. So you can't just create a video one and done and let it run. You actually have to create new content, fresh content, have more creators who are also promoting your products in addition to yourself. So it's a much heavier investment on the part of the seller than a traditional e-commerce platform would be.
So many sellers on the call probably sell on Amazon, probably sell on eBay, probably have a Walmart store. And we kind of all understand and know how those platforms work. You list your products, you pay for advertising. Over time, your product grows, you get reviews, and you get sales. Like, it sounds like on TikTok, nothing moves until you produce content. Is that true?
Correct. And honestly, you could drive traffic to TikTok through other channels. So there is a way that you could potentially be obtaining sales, but you do need the content. And so there are ways to help and supplement in content creation. You don't always have to create your own content. You can leverage third parties, and TikTok Shop has an affiliate marketplace, which I can go into a little more detail, to be able to attract creators and get them to create content on your behalf. But certainly there is a heavy content reliance in order to drive sales for your products.
So James, you've been in the Amazon space for, well, almost 2 decades, and obviously for a while we've seen many sellers stick to Amazon. All they did was sell on Amazon. Perhaps over time expand into eBay. Perhaps over time expand into Walmart. Like, at this point, as more and more of them ask the question of, are we building a sustainable brand? Do you see success on DTC? Do you see success on social? Like, how well are these kind of native sellers of Amazon are being able to transition into what Kaylee is describing, and to becoming content houses and becoming followed brands on social media platforms?
Before we get all the way down the path to actually having a well-built, well-defined brand, the process of building the kind of content that's needed to succeed either on a DTC site or on TikTok, these are skills that most Amazon-centric brands have not developed. I have a lot of people asking a lot of questions around, what do I do? How do I get started? These are skills I don't have. How do I figure out how to build those skills? How do I do that cost effectively? If you think back to when Amazon started the marketplace, one of the mentalities that it took on early on was, let's figure out how to make it really easy for sellers to sell. And we'll have this standard process where you can pretty much throw anything on the platform, and eventually your product will find its way to consumers. When you look at DTC, having to drive traffic to your own site, or you look at social media platforms like TikTok, these are really different ways of having to engage with customers. And quite frankly, too many sellers on Amazon have spent too much time focused exclusively on Amazon. And so I expect in the next year, we're going to see a lot more companies actually start that experimentation and take that step of saying, okay, I don't really know what I'm going to get if I explore DTC or if I explore a social media platform, but I know that apparently this is a big deal, and my kids keep telling me I need to expand into those channels. I have to think about, trying these things out. Getting sellers on Amazon to try something new outside of Amazon is really about changing their whole mentality of, if I only have 10 hours a week to invest in something other than Amazon, don't expect that those 10 hours are going to generate initially the same amount of return that you would get if you put the 10 hours directly into Amazon. But longer term, if you want to build a brand, you need to be where customers are, and where customers are is not just on Amazon.
So Michal, you look at hundreds of deals every year. How many of these sellers actually are able to build a brand, and how many of them are just kind of plain old sellers on Amazon?
It's a good question, and it starts with defining what a brand is. But you may claim that there are real brands on Amazon as well. If you were talking more about a multi-channel operation, then I think that we see it coming. We see more brands operate on more than one channel. If I need to guess, I don't have hard data. Maybe you have, Joe, but I would say that more DTC sellers shift into add Amazon as another channel. So this move is probably easier to make than the other way around. But there are good brands. There are brands. We know personally some very good brands with brand recognition and searches for the brand names themselves on Amazon, out of Amazon. So it is a growing phenomenon.
One of the questions I get asked a lot by Amazon brands is this whole concept of when customers go on Amazon, they typically are specifically going to look for something. There is an intended need that they have to fill. And for better or for worse, the perception for many of these brands is still that if they go to, for example, a TikTok, they may see something they like, but it's more of a spontaneous purchase versus there's 5 things I need to buy for my family this week, and I'm going to go and buy them on Amazon because I can find 500 choices for each of those needs. Figuring out how do you separate out the planned purchase from the potentially unplanned purchase, that there are very different types of needs that customers are looking for when they're looking in those two different situations. So neither one is better or worse. It's just different types of situations, and you need to put different types of information in front of customers and expect that you're going to get different types of responses.
It's also, if I may add, it's also interesting to see that not every brand works on every platform. So we had an entire webinar, James, if you remember, about does this Amazon brand can work on D2C, and we kind of find out that probably half of them or even more won't succeed on Shopify, and vice versa. There are brands, there are products. We have clients who say, my clients wake up in the morning and they don't know they're going to buy this product. I'm actually curious, you were mentioning on TikTok that TikTok doesn't fit every category and doesn't fit every product. Can you maybe elaborate on that? Which category does it fit and which not?
I think for TikTok Shop today, it's not the place where you might go seek out a particular product. And not even just TikTok Shop, even Instagram, let's say. Those might not be the places, and how you're finding products is through your scrolling, and in your feed, something pops up, whether it's being promoted by an influencer that you know, or just somebody that you can relate to, and now you're inspired. You want to purchase it. It's that, oh, I had no idea that this existed, but now I want it. That is kind of the way we think about shopping with social commerce. And it is, again, the more traditional way within social commerce that customers are finding products. However, there are, and Instagram's doing it, TikTok Shop as well, the traditional e-commerce page. So within TikTok Shop, it's called Shop Tab. You can go, you can search, and you can find products that you might be interested in or want to purchase directly from that social commerce platform. So eventually we may start to see consumer behavior shift into actually seeking and searching for products. But James is absolutely correct. Today it is more spontaneous as you go through the experience and you find it. And if we look at how those products are being displayed, it's in video or it's in live, right? It's in a live session, or it's in a short 30-second video. And so when you think about which products best lend themselves to videos, it's going to be demonstrable products that you can see in action, that you can see working. So beauty works very well because you're watching the person, the influencer, apply the product, and you get to see the result right away. Same with like hair styling tools. So beauty is a big category. We also see electronics being another big category. Home goods, so goods that are used in the kitchen or for organizing. That's a big trend today on TikTok, where you see home organizers or people who go through and reorganize their cabinets, and what materials and what products are they using to help support that. Prepackaged foods, another one that has done actually very well on TikTok Shop. But those are the types of product categories that are going to lend themselves best to video content. So when you're thinking about your products as an Amazon seller, let's say, think about which ones are demonstrable, which could be easily shown and would have an impact on the customer when seen. Those are going to probably perform better than products that don't, like consumables as an example.
Matt, I just want to add maybe one point and to add a point and a question to you, Kaylee. If James mentioned that that sales on TikTok are more an answer to a spontaneous choice of shoppers, then maybe it's important to clarify that although you're looking after a spontaneous decision of a shopper, you can build a channel which generates repetitive sales. So here, this is not sporadic anymore because the algorithm benefits you from a certain success. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Can you elaborate on that?
No, absolutely. And really the key is the community that you build. And so ultimately, when you're investing in social commerce, when you're investing in building a brand on TikTok Shop, you're investing in building a community around your products. And that community is established through the engagement that you are going to have, or the creators that you hire are going to have with the product that you're selling and the end customers or the potential end customers. And that's going to build brand recognition. It's going to build repeat purchases. It's going to allow you to target your core consumer. And if you don't know who your core consumer is today, paid ads are a great way to identify who that core consumer is and then target them. And then as you create your content on TikTok Shop, target those specific users, make it targeted to that population, and then it will multiply, because the way that the algorithm works is it's going to identify people who might be interested in your particular product. So your reach and your ability to get your product in front of consumers who may never have even heard of or considered purchasing your product is going to be multiplied exponentially.
Okay. Obviously, we've seen massive changes to privacy kind of first world, and iPhone and Android are trying to limit how well Facebook and other advertising platforms can track users, and thus kind of make advertising a lot less effective. So Mike, how is Shopify trying to figure out consumer acquisition in this world where reaching and tracking users directly is no longer possible through cookies?
So that's a really good question. There's like so many good tidbits, by the way, that have just been talked about that are very relevant to the collabs world and the Shopify world. I think about just like one thing as an anchor point. It's the most amazing time to build a brand. Like, it's the most amazing time to be a merchant. There's so much opportunity. There's so much optionality. Think about just like the conversations we just had over the last 5 minutes. It's like, oh, I'm having trouble finding a customer. I can do ads. I'm having trouble scaling up customer acquisition. I can do TikTok shops. I'm having trouble, figuring out this or that. I can go to Amazon and list my products there. The optionality is so good. And that's like 1% of the options that are available to merchants today. Shopify, if you think about, when it became very difficult to acquire customers, ATT hit, customer acquisition profile was getting skewed. Everything was becoming really, really difficult. So purely from a financial point of view, the market basically said, hey, it's very, very difficult to be an entrepreneur right now. That is basically what happened. And what we said at Shopify is like, hey, we are the entrepreneurship company. Why don't we help these merchants do what they do best, focus on their products, get customers, that type of thing. And you see, if you go back in time a little bit, you'll see like the launch of Shopify Collabs. You'll see the launch of Shopify Collective. You'll see some of these things that just are inherently huge advantages to Shopify, right? Like, they're just tools and features that merchants have kind of been asking for a really, really long time. And it gives merchants more optionality. So really the growth of, like, when everyone went home, everything went remote, customer acquisition costs rise, ATT became harder. the natural next step for a lot of merchants was to partner directly with people to tell their stories. This comes into like exactly what Kaylee and James are talking about. Telling stories through content is actually pretty hard for a lot of people. I'm no surprise that, James, you're getting a lot of questions from Amazon sellers that people are just like, where do I start? What do I do? Well, in many ways, like people can just pick up their phone, start taking pictures, videos, that type of thing. But now you have a network of amazing creators in these niche communities that can also tell your story, versus going to one of the biggest agencies in the world and spending all this money. Creators are now sort of the storytellers of this generation. And and if you find the right creators, by the way, they're very honest about your products. That's what's most amazing about finding the right people. So where we entered with Shopify Collabs is we said, hey, let's like rise the tide. Let's basically like make this all easier for merchants. Let's build a tool that they can rely on that's free to get set up and install, and then start to partner with the right creators because, hey, we have all this amazing data already. We know conversion, we know checkout, we know attribution, we know all this stuff. Why don't we make this available to our merchants today? So there's a lot of really cool stuff we're working on today, but like a merchant can just install Shopify Collabs, which is the product I work on, and they can just start partnering with creators and influencers in the same way they can do that on TikTok. And it's, again, just rising the tide in all ways. It's like TikTok is really good for, you know, a set of tasks and a set of opportunities, and same with Shopify Collabs. So I think there's some really cool stuff we're doing. And obviously we took advantage of ATT being very difficult. Meta and Google have made it obviously a lot better with machine learning now. And, you know, the customer acquisition profile is now recovered in many ways for merchants, but now they have another channel to promote on. So that's kind of like our perspective when it comes to just like giving merchants more optionality, helping them do what they do best, essentially.
Another question to both Mike and Kaylee. We obviously on Instagram, on TikTok, you probably have millions of influencers, probably hundreds of thousands of content creators. Like how do you as a brand figure out who to work with, and do you try to build these kind of long-term relationships where that content creator actually works with you as a brand for years to come, or do you kind of treat them as kind of producers of videos, user-generated content for you, and you try to go through as many of them as you can?
Yeah, I can just jump in quick. It's always best to have like a very tight relationship with your content creators, and like the longer the better is generally my advice. Is like, you don't want to treat creators and influencers as like a transactional thing. It's not just like buying an ad on Facebook. It's really a relationship you build up over time. And also like, it's not just about customer acquisition too, is what I always tell merchants, is that they can get product advice, they can get recommendations. There's so much you can get from creators because they're the voice of many, many customers. By going to one creator, you get access to thousands and thousands of other, like, for example, I was just talking to a friend of mine that's promoting to moms, and moms specifically that have twins. And I'm like, this is such a smart thing because moms that have twins probably stick together in this like niche pockets and niche communities of people. Like, if you do I always advise this to our merchants, but I'm like, if you do a monthly Zoom call with your community of creators, like that just makes them feel more connected to you as a brand. It makes you feel like more than just like paying them commissions for affiliate links or paid posts or any of those types of things. It makes them feel like they're a part of the inner circle, the inner community. And I think that's also what's amazing about this like creator thing that's just like growing really quickly. But yeah, in general, just to summarize, I would always recommend merchants like keep a very long-term relationship. Don't treat it as a transaction like you would on like a Facebook ad. It's a very different style of customer acquisition. And then also just ensure that you are kind of like taking feedback from your community of creators, because it's not going to work out perfectly every single time. But that's just like my 2 cents.
How do you make that first step? How do you go from 1 million influencers to having 6 you work with?
Yeah, like if you think about just general data science, general statistics, like your brand, what is your brand's Dunbar number? Like how many relationships can you actually maintain as a brand or as a merchant maintaining these types of relationships? So if you've like 2, influencer community managers at the team, maybe you can do like 300 relationships. Some merchants I've worked with have thousands of creators in their community that promote with them. That being said, there's definitely a concentration into that like top 100 of creators that are just, producing consistent results. So how do you find them? You use tools. You use tools like TikTok Shop. You use tools like Collabs, you use Instagram, you use YouTube. Like there's not like a silver bullet to this stuff, right? Like you reach out, you develop relationships, you invite them by email, you give them codes, you give them links, you give them gifts, you do all these other things. And then how do you maintain them? You treat them as people, not as advertisements. So that's probably my 2 cents there too.
And I think
Cabilly, how does TikTok handle this?
Yeah, to pile on, and honestly, everything Mike said is accurate. I think the one thing that I would say for TikTok Shop, given content and volume of content, to get started is really important. So when you think about the content that you're paying for, say you're working with a particular creator, you might not get the payoff immediately. The more content that's out there, the more likely that you're going to get conversion to a purchase, the more likely that content will get re-promoted and you will make more sales. So your strategy may need to evolve over time. So as you identify and you have a set of creators that you're working with, you may choose volume initially, so more creators at first, to be able to get that content out there. And then you identify which videos are working and which actually resonate with your core customer base and who you're trying to target. And that, again, could also evolve over time. And when you think about TikTok Shop and the fact that you're creating a community, if you can develop relationships with your creators who understand your product, who then go out and advocate on behalf of your product, you'll have a core group that during a live session, for example, can help moderate, can help answer customer questions on your behalf because they understand your product, they believe in your product, and they're there to support you. One thing to just quickly touch on for TikTok Shop is their affiliate marketplace, which again makes it extremely easy to find creators who align with your brand. And it works both ways. You can put out a request for creators to create content for you, or they can reach out to you directly. And you set a commission and you say you'll get X% of sales. And I will say at the moment, it seems average is around 30%, which may again seem high, but over time, you won't be as heavily reliant on that mass content distribution. And so could potentially work on a different kind of mix or way of compensating your creators, whether it be per video, et cetera. But ultimately, that relationship and your community that you build, it extends to customers, but it also extends to your creator population. So developing that will pay dividends for you and your brand.
We spent the last few minutes talking about the relationship with influencers and creators, which obviously both Cabilly and Mike agrees to be very, very important. James, how do you build relationships with shoppers on a platform like Amazon, which is notorious for not giving you that much data? For example, email addresses or even addresses, physical addresses, and even names of your own shoppers.
So if you're an Amazon seller and you've decided that you're going to focus all in on Amazon, some of these other traditional paths of engaging with customers after the sale, they're definitely not allowed. One of the things that I spend a lot of my time doing with clients is talking through optimizing the packaging and figuring out how are you delivering value to the customer after the sale. And I'm not just talking about give them information about your product, but use that as an opportunity to send them to educational destinations, not places where they're going to buy stuff, but places where they're going to learn more about your product, learn more about how they can actually engage with you and share feedback. Those types of opportunities to tell your story over and over again, but also be seen as a brand that's listening, that recognizes that its products are not perfect for everybody. That all starts, from my view, that starts with much better packaging. Figure out what part of the packaging is right now blank space that you're not using to tell more of your story, or to tell more of your story about other catalog selection you have. These things sound incredibly simple, but unfortunately, too many private label sellers on Amazon, they are basically taking brown boxes or white boxes from overseas. They're slapping their UPC on, maybe putting a sticker with their brand name on it, but there's not really much engagement beyond, I have to put this item in a box so that I can ship it to you. That's not a brand. You use everything about the packaging to tell more of your story. It's not a direct, you do this and this will immediately follow, but you've got to be able to look at your packaging as a longer term investment to help consumers learn more about your product after the sale. you've got to deliver that value after the sale.
So if I understand it correctly, what you're saying is don't look for black hat techniques trying to extract this data from Amazon.
No.
Find a reason for shoppers to want to connect to you after the purchase.
I want consumers to feel comfortable that they are getting the value out of the product that they think they're getting. So they know how to set up the product, they know how to clean the product, how to store the product, when it's time to replace the product. Those types of basic questions, depending on what category product you're in, for a lot of consumers, they don't really know how to do that properly. And even something like beauty cream. Okay, well, how much do I apply? How often do I apply it? Do I have to wash my face before I apply it? If you're selling a household product, again, how do I use it properly? If I have to fix something, how do I do that? A lot of those types of questions are questions that once consumers have used your product more than once, they may start to ask themselves those questions. And if you're not doing a particularly good job helping customers think that through, the next time they're looking for something similar to this, they're going to go find someone who is doing a better job of answering those questions. And all of that happens after the sale. Do you have proper instruction manuals? Do you use the packaging to tell more of the story or direct people to these educational sites? That's all of the other aspects of the product functionality to create more of an engagement with consumers. Now, everything I've talked about, you can use that outside of Amazon. But for the brands that are choosing to focus predominantly on that Amazon channel, first and foremost, most brands don't do a very good job with packaging because it's seen as a functional, must protect the product so I can ship it, rather than an opportunity to engage with customers.
I'll maybe add to that, if we're talking about Amazon packaging and try to get to the customer themselves, we're seeing many Amazon sellers trying to put inserts where they invite the buyers to go on the website, maybe get a gift and then producer reviews. That was very strong in 2020, maybe 2021. That's no longer possible. We've seen many suspensions around that. Even at Fortunet, during a deal, we saw suspensions, and so really not a good idea these days. An insert is possible sometimes if you just ask for a very neutral feedback, and that's pretty much it. Thank you and neutral feedback. That's it. So don't try to work around Amazon's rule. That's not the place probably to get to the names, the emails, etc. You have other platforms.
Yeah, assuming the seller finds a white hat technique to get emails or builds it over time, like are buyers of brands valuing that? Is there a ceiling on valuations of kind of pure Amazon sellers if they don't have assets like their own mailing lists?
It does add, generally speaking, to the valuation, the fact that you have your own customer list, and I think that's one of the restrictions on Amazon, and that's why one of the reasons we're seeing in 2023 and now going to 2024, we're seeing more and more brands trying to expand beyond Amazon. So not trying to find those black hat or maybe white hat that nobody knows, but really creating your own brand and your own customer list so that you can launch and have those discussions with your own customers and have that connection. So that's definitely something that's valuable during a sale.
Haley, I think on TikTok Shop, you also don't get that much data, similar to like Amazon. How do brands get shoppers to buy more than once on TikTok Shop?
It's correct. So they cannot, the customer data is not shared. And that goes back to when you're deciding where to sell, what platforms you want to sell on, and because as mentioned before, there's a lot of options available to merchants today. Decide what you want to get out of it. If you're looking to get customer data, TikTok Shop, maybe not the best option for you. It provides the structure, it provides logistics in some cases, not as widespread today, but eventually will be. It provides payment processing, but you're not going to get to retarget your customers in the same way. TikTok as a social media platform does have paid advertisements. So if you wanted that customer data, you could also purchase paid ads and have those ads direct to your website if that data was most important to you. So as you're assessing, and it's the same with Instagram, it's the same with other platforms, as you're assessing where you want to effectively sell your product, ask yourself what you're trying to get out of that. If it is the structural platform to have the product detail page, manage the logistics, manage the payment processing for you, great. TikTok Shop, Amazon, those are perfect options. If you're really trying to drive engagement and get that email list and retarget your customers, I would supplement that with a paid advertisement strategy where you can direct them to your website and then obtain some of that detail that you would need to retarget. Within TikTok Shop, if that's the avenue you go and you really want to re-engage, ultimately it's going to be through your shop pages and your accounts associated to your store, where you are going to release new content that is then going to be engaged by customers, and they'll be able to see what's up and coming, what's new with your product, and then that will ultimately lead to repurchase rates. But again, that's very much dependent upon how you invest and how much content you're creating for your brand within TikTok Shop.
So assuming you're not interacting with your kind of TikTok shoppers through email, are you still kind of expecting that the seller or brand is commenting on posts on TikTok, interacting with the audience, building a relationship with shoppers through this kind of TikTok native kind of information exchange?
Absolutely. There is direct communication via IM, instant messaging within TikTok Shop. So you can communicate with customers in that regard related to a specific purchase. From a community standpoint, one really, I think, effective strategy has been through the lives. And if you haven't seen a live, I recommend hopping on TikTok, and you'll organically be surfaced up at least one or a couple different lives, some related to shopping, others related to, you know, a topic or something that you're perhaps interested in. But if you go and navigate to a shopping live, there's some interesting ways that merchants have engaged with their customer base. Some of them will literally film themselves picking and packing orders, and they'll talk about it as they're picking and packing it. Or perhaps their order has some surprise element to it, right? Like they could get one of 5 different options. Customers love going to the lives to see which option they're going to get or which color they're going to get. And so you can create kind of this fun, light environment where customers are able to see you as a person, as a merchant, excited about your products, talking about your products, and it will engage them and generate that communication channel where they're going to ask questions to you and you can answer them live. And there's a lot of customer purchases that don't ever happen because the customer has a question that isn't answered. Either they think, I'll come back to this and research it later. Maybe they ask it on a post and they don't get an immediate response. In a live, I can ask a question and get an immediate response, which results in higher purchase rates because now I know the answer to my question and I'm going to go buy that product. So again, lives are a great option for merchants to be able to engage and communicate directly with customers in a way that they haven't been able to do so before.
Mike, we talked a lot about data, and we obviously have, in the space of Amazon, we're all familiar with sellers using data to grow their brands as well as to understand what to make in the first place. Like how is Shopify helping merchants to get the data about their shoppers, about the trends, and then use that to launch products, to launch brands, and grow them?
So as a helpful just reference point, Shopify has the whole point of Shopify is basically access to customer data. So one of the big things that we have a perspective on is when we build something like an affiliate tool, you get access to the creator relationship and the customers that come in through that channel. It's the same D2C channel strategy that Shopify has executed on for basically the last 20 years, where someone could purchases from you, you get access to their information, you fulfill, you can customize that entire journey however you'd like. And that's pretty much the same process that you get to experience via something like Shopify Collabs, where you engage with the creator, you have that relationship, you own it, and you also have any referral that comes in from those creators. So just as like a helpful reference point, like our worldview is that merchants are in control. So when you sign up to a tool, like any one of our tools really, you get as much access as pretty much we do, right? So in this way, when you sign up to Shopify Collabs and you want to work with a creator, I'm a big fan of being data informed versus data driven. And the reason why I say that is because being informed about data helps you make better decisions. But if you're making decisions purely based on data, then you may end up running into false positives that may end up sending you down the wrong path. So a lot of people during the days of like, because I'm just going to reference the product line that I work on, a lot of people back in the day were like, I need to have a certain amount of followers or a certain amount of engagement or a certain amount of this or that for a particular influencer or creator. And the reality is everyone's trying to find this like magic formula for working with a creator and influencer. And the data doesn't show any correlation between any of these metrics. Like there is some, if you kind of look at it within certain views and you kind of like make it look pretty and stuff like that, certainly. But the real thing that generates like positive results for your brand is really like an unquantifiable metric, which is love. The love component of your relationship with the creator, with the consumer, with the buyer, with the seller, whatever you want to with whatever you want to reference, is how much passion they have toward your brand. So, you know, what is the general NPS of your product? What is the general, like James, you're talking about packaging, right? The details matter. Every single piece of your product matters when you're handing it to consumers, because now they have choice selection. So, and even Kaylee, when you're talking about like live sessions, if people don't get answers to fundamental questions, they're going to go find something somewhere else that's going to answer those questions. There's so much optionality for them. So when it comes to data, like I have never been more bullish on data teams being paired up with brands than I ever have before, because now, again, there's so much optionality, and being data informed in this way can really help you make a lot of decisions. But specifically, I also use the framework of like, let's use data teams and let's use data to not make the bad decisions either. Because like there's so many pitfalls because this world moves so quickly. It's like some brand new marketing technique comes out that's going to battle this strategy or that strategy. I mean, you know, it's 2024 and we're talking about influencer and creator. And I imagine all the people on this call 10 years ago were like all like just listening to pundits of creator and influencer marketing. Everyone was like, this is not going to work. This is not scalable. Now we have venture scale companies. We have acquisitions in this space. We have like merchants that are like, I cannot deal with, there's so many merchants that come to me every single day, like an unfathomable amount of merchants that are just looking to get access to this channel, looking to like up level their social experiences for customer acquisition. And I'd say that like, if you listen to the data 10 years ago, every piece of data would tell you that this is not a channel. Now it is like a fundamental channel for brands. So I'd say like, just kind of think about that when you're thinking about data. But again, I'm very, very bullish on data teams moving forward, especially pairing with, like, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a bunch of like agencies pop up that just do data for a bucket of brands. And those buckets of brands are basically just like using data to not make bad decisions and also just be informed on decisions moving in the future so that they can be different. But yeah.
So James, Mike talked about making bad decisions. Something we see in the space of Amazon is that everyone uses similar tools. Everyone uses Hero Intent, everyone uses Jungle Scout, perhaps Smart Scout, perhaps something else. How do you avoid making the same decision as 1,000 of your competitors?
Even if you're all using the same tools, I think back to, you know, when I had my agency, one of the most common mistakes is that sellers would often assume that once they had optimized their listing, it was optimized forever, and they weren't going to go back and re-optimize, or they weren't going to say, what do I need to do to find segments of customers that I don't know are interested in my products, and explore whether some of this top of funnel advertising would help me identify new ways to engage with new groups of customers. And so this idea that somehow we know exactly who our customers are and we've already figured out what the message is that we need to send to them. Customers evolve, customer preferences evolve. We need to continue to always be innovating and exploring the possibility that we actually don't know who our ideal customer is. We have to keep exploring that. And so even if we're all using the same tools, it's how we use the same tools and how we make sure that in every week, every month, every quarter, we're going back and saying, all right, part of what I do by definition is going to be inefficient, meaning I'm going to spend money just to learn. I'm not going to spend money to sell more. I'm going to spend money to learn. I'm going to spend time exploring what my competitors are doing and asking myself the question, why might some of these techniques that my competitors are using, why might they be effective and I've never explored them? That kind of open-ended research, just broadly call it research, that kind of open-ended research, even if you're using some of these third-party SaaS tools to help give you data, at the end of the day, it's not about the data, it's about how are you ultimately going to use the data to stay a little bit ahead of everybody else. The reality on Amazon is you and I could make basically the same widget, put it in a slightly different package, put a slightly different brand name on it, and of course, different UPCs. And if you're better at slowly, or I shouldn't say slowly, if you're better at continuing to pay attention to small changes in customer preference, if you're actively listening, if you're looking at not only your reviews, but your competitor reviews, and you're saying, what am I missing here? What do I need to be thinking about that would make me a little bit better? That kind of exercise is what's going to differentiate a pretty good seller from a really good seller. Not whether you use Jungle Scout and I use Helium 10. No, that's not where the differentiation is going to be made.
Okay. And 𝐤, I mean, you've described the sort of the importance of virality on TikTok Shop and how kind of the volume of content is a way you figure out what type of content works best, and then over time that drives your sales. Like, does TikTok give you any sort of signals, any sort of data to make those decisions more informed than you kind of shooting into the universe, hoping to find what type of content works best this week?
You're able to track performance of your content, right? And so you're able to see how many views a particular piece of content received, how that converted into purchases by customers. But it is kind of figuring out where your customer is and recreating the content that works well. And when you think about differentiating yourself, I think the way that TikTok Shop slightly differs in the ecosystem they're attempting to build from Amazon is you have a single detail page model on Amazon. So it's very much about the product and competing on price. So you have 6 sellers all listing this exact same product. The loyalty isn't as important. Whereas on TikTok Shop, every seller and every product is unique. There's no more than one seller on every product. So as you build out your profile, your customer base on TikTok, the goal is to create that loyalty. So as your product, let's say it becomes very popular, of course, similar products will pop up because other merchants are observing and watching what works, and they're going to put out a similar product. However, if you've done your job well, and you've created that engagement and community, you're hopefully going to drive them to your products. And they're going to look for your products, not a similar product, but your product based upon the experience that you've provided to them, whether it be customer service, whether it be the packaging, as was mentioned before, how you engage with them via lives. They understand the proposition that you provide from a product standpoint. And so they're coming back to you. But again, the way to know is honestly in how your videos are converting to direct product purchases. And that data is provided, but it's going to be a bit of a trial and error as you identify that pocket of customers who are going to be purchasing your product.
𝐤, can you give an example of a success story, a brand that really succeeded on TikTok Shops?
Sure, there's a couple that come to mind. I'm sure many of you are familiar. We talked about 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝑍𝐾am in our prep session for this webinar, and it's a great example because it is an Amazon seller And they came on to TikTok Shop, and they've been very successful. And they've done so through a few different ways. First and foremost, they're very engaging. They are engaging with their core customer. They have a product that works well. The content was heavy. I don't know the exact number of videos that they were putting out regularly, but it was regular, steady drumbeat of new content going out and targeting their customer base. I also noticed they were hitting different languages. Their content wasn't only in English, they were also marketing in Spanish, which also happened to be a big core customer for them. And I believe that that led to their success. They knew who their customer was and they targeted that particular population. Another brand that's done very well, and I see a lot of them in my feed, but it may be I'm being targeted, but it's called Beach Waver, and it's a hairstyling tool. And very similarly, they have a very steady drumbeat of content. It is a product that is very easy to demonstrate. Curling of the hair, you can see the impact immediately that it works well. It's a pretty product. And they have very engaging lives. Live sessions where they will have guests come, they will curl the hair, they will show them the product. And it creates a lot of excitement around new releases that they come out with different product colors that customers get really excited about. So again, if you look at the brands that have done well, it always comes back to that engagement factor and volume of content. And it creates a flywheel where repeat purchases continue, and those customers who purchased, similar customers like them, the algorithm finds, targets, and then creates additional demand for your product.
You mentioned 𝐒𝐿 kind of launching their videos in multiple languages. Do you get kind of signals like that on your audience to understand the demographics, the languages being spoken, the age groups, and things alike?
Not on TikTok Shop. So the only way for you to really get that data would be through paid advertisements or direct to consumer on your website.
Got it. James, explain to us Prime Video ads.
Sorry, say that again, please.
Explain to us Prime Video ads.
So we have to start with, we go back to this question of data. Amazon has more first-party data on what customers are searching for and what they've bought on the Amazon platform. Amazon is using all of that data to be able to offer advertisers the opportunity to do highly targeted ads that aren't presented to everybody, but presented to very specific segments of customers through the different video channels that Amazon has access to. So, you know, the Prime Video channel and the Thursday Night Football and some of these other vehicles that Amazon offers, they're able to take the advertising slots and not only offer highly targeted ads using their first-party data, but because they own the channel, the actual sending of the signal back and forth, Amazon's in a position that they can offer you and me very different ads depending on where we might be at different stages of the buying cycle. As Amazon gets more sophisticated and probably finds partners who will also be interested in tapping into that first-party data, Amazon's in a unique position relative to just about anybody else to be able to offer this level of targeting to advertisers. If you think about just how many dollars are being spent today on television and print in the United States, I mean, we're talking $100 billion a year. None of the other major advertisers have this level of data that allows them to be able to target different groups of customers with different messages. And so when we talk about what is Prime Video advertising for Amazon, this is one of the biggest growth opportunities for them in the next 5 to 10 years. And I anticipate that, you know, they will start doing additional tens of billions of dollars of advertising as brands start to see a much better conversion on the ads because the right message is being put in front of the right customer at the right time versus everybody sees the same ad and hopefully somebody responds.
So, I mean, 5 years ago on Amazon, all you had were sponsored product ads. All you could do, you just lift your product higher in search results. By now, there's probably a 17,000 different ad types and targeting ways. And also every other retail channel like Walmart, like eBay, like Etsy, and the likes have also launched their own ad networks. We now call them retail media networks. like how should a brand or a seller think of this universe of advertising options, and how do you actually manage all of that complexity?
Well, if you're a Fortune 5,000 brand, you probably hired one of the big 6 ad firms to help try to make sense of these things. But the reality is, whether you're a big 6 advertising firm or you're a small agency helping run advertising for brands on some of these channels we talked about today, the world's evolving really, really quickly. And so you need to be thinking about, how am I going to experiment with some of my budget over here and try this out? And how am I going to experiment over here with something else? We've talked already about, how do I go find new segments of customers by trying messaging to people that I haven't otherwise in the past gone after. We're also talking about, how do I potentially do some of this advertising, this DSP advertising that Amazon offers, where I can try out highly targeted messages. This is stuff that didn't really exist at a scalable manner even a couple of years ago. For somebody who says, I don't know anything about TikTok advertising, how do I do that? Well, you may have to find yourself an agency to be able to find the right kinds of folks who will help create content and create the right kind of message. And likewise, if you're a brand that's just launched DTC and you're saying, I don't know anything about how to drive traffic to my site because I don't even know who my customers are. Well, all of this comes together around, you as a brand owner. You need to understand who your customers are today, and you need to continue to listen and observe and figure out, are your customers changing, and are there new segments coming on board in the future? This is not about, hey, Amazon's going to make it really easy for me. I throw $100 at sponsored ads, and my ads will show up when somebody searches for a keyword. That's great, but that doesn't really help you understand who your customer is. And so the development of these other channels, whether you continue to be dominantly selling on Amazon or you explore some of these other channels, at the end of the day, you got to know who your customer is, and you got to spend more time getting to know who your customer is, even if it's taking time away from doing something you think will drive short-term revenue. You got to know who your customer is, because if you know who your customer is, you can engage with them and you can figure out what their needs are and how their needs are evolving. None of that stuff you really needed to do when you were just selling on Amazon. You just kind of threw your stuff there, you outspent everybody else, you had pretty good, decent content, and you hope for the best. The world doesn't work that way anymore.
Mike, James talked about you being a very, very big brand and you kind of hiring one of the top agencies, and then they deal with your ads. Like, are you seeing the opposite happening in the sort of a smaller scale, where sellers and brands are trying to use software as a service tools instead to run their advertising?
There's 2 things I'll say. One is, I see it directly every single day with merchant and creator relationships. The creators are essentially, like, I used to make this joke when we first started Dovetail, but merchants are not going to Don Draper anymore. They're going to the woman down the street in Williamsburg to do their ads, right? And I think like that was basically what has happened kind of in the world of influencer marketing and creators. So on two very important segments is actually the content creation. And obviously you're going to get like a limited exposure through organic when someone posts on their social feed. Maybe the social networks throttle it back a bit just to protect their main business model. But nonetheless, like a creator will post, an unboxing video or something else like that on their Instagram stories or on TikTok or something like that, getting you probably a bit of customers. Really savvy customer or really savvy merchants, they'll take that content, they'll pay the creator a licensing fee, or they'll pay for the content directly, and they'll say, hey, I'm going to experiment. Just like Kaylee has mentioned, and just like James is talking about, they'll take all this content and then they'll boost it out to a larger audiences using those native tools so that they can kind of lower their cost of customer or of content and lower the cost of experimentation. So this is a very, very good example of being data informed and not necessarily data driven, because you have to be able to experiment and test. And then you can take the data that you extrapolate to like say, hey, I just tried 10 ad segments with 3 different creators. How can I just double down on segment A and B? And then basically like expand those audiences past to a certain point. So 100% we're seeing like this being a very common technique or strategy. And then, obviously because we're Shopify, we have an amazing app store. There's tons of developers that are building out solutions to do these types of things, not just Shopify now. Like we have obviously Shopify audiences to capture, very targeted networks within the Shopify community, but we also have third-party developers that are building amazing solutions to build out things to do those exact same things too. So like the way I look at it really is like we're lowering the cost to build a business. And I think that's one of the things that's really special about Shopify is that, you know, you don't necessarily have to go sign a year-long contract with an agency. You don't necessarily have to wait too much time to get some content or some really polished stuff. Actually, it's pretty much the opposite right now. People want really authentic content. And I made this joke the other day to a merchant, but I'm like, pull out your iPhone 5, take some like really grainy photos of something and make it feel more real than this polished experience, because your buyers, obviously I'm not recommending doing that, but it's just giving like a very strong polarizing example of what I mean here, is that people want like an authentic experience. They don't necessarily want these like super polished ads anymore at scale. And there is nothing against doing a Super Bowl ad. I love it when our merchants do Super Bowl ads. But for the average merchants that's just getting started, you know, oftentimes at scale, just like the folks are saying here, you want to experiment with so much content, and generally like having a really, really heavy content feed yields sales. So, you know, there's a lot of things that kind of get bundled into that, but hopefully that makes sense for your audience as they're starting to experiment with this stuff.
And just to pile on that point, I always recommend a combination of creator and creating your own content, because it is so easy nowadays. And if you want to get the volume out there and you want a lower budget, there's a pretty straightforward formula that you can leverage in order to create content. You start off with a hook. So you hook in your audience, something, there's so many out there that you could take advantage of, but like, if you know kind of thing, and then jump into the content. People are interested. They want to know, like, do I know? And then you give a description of the product, you show it. Last, call to action, go here to buy. Very straightforward, formula works. 10 to 20 seconds of your time, create that video, supplement your creator content as well, and it will create, you know, more noise around your product and what you're trying to get across. I also think that it's important when you look at creators, the ecosystem today, anyone can be a creator. We're creating almost it's almost too much, right? There's so many creators. It's very difficult to be able to find like who is the right creator, who should I potentially work with. And so I actually had a question for you, Mike, for Shopify, for how do you help merchants when it comes to figuring out who should I work with? I know TikTok Shop has the affiliate marketplace, a little less, again, it's very crowded. There's a lot of creators who are looking to break into the market. So how is Shopify looking at this problem?
First off, what you're kind of pointing at is we're blending the like definitions very quickly, like creator, consumer, merchant, like all these things are just becoming like a very blended terminology, because you can fit yourself in, depending on like your sophistication, into multiple of those buckets. And then, you know, depends on your philosophy of the world, but like everyone is a creator, like if you just kind of think about it like that. And as far as like how do you connect the like our tool, so there's like kind of two sides to it, very similar to the many other tools that are out there, but like there's two sides. One is like a merchant-led app experience. So you download the app from the App Store, and then you get we call it recruiting. So recruiting is like this ability for you to search for keywords, locations, those types of things. And you get access to this, you know, either vetted network of creators that we have in our system, or people that are just like opted into getting discovered by, you know, merchants. They associate themselves to brand values, they associate themselves to keywords, they do all these types of things, because it's essentially just like a recruitment marketplace, just like you would expect, right? As a merchant, you come in, you type in a bunch of words, and then we're going to give you like a ranking or stack algorithm of people that are like potentially a good fit for you. You press one click, you invite that creator. If the creator accepts your, you know, affiliate link package, your commission, your discount, your gift, all those types of things, they get connected to you so that you can communicate directly to them. So that's how we kind of solve it. And obviously there's like, we've made some huge headway on search and recruiting and making that really good. But if you think about it too, like we make it really easy to find your current customers that are also creators, right? So it's like, that's where that blended definition kind of comes in, and you're like, wait, there's actually a very large subset of my current customers that have large following on social media. How can I get and activate those people as priorities once I figure out the messaging that is reproducible? The second way is like on the creator experience, creators can actually find merchants that have opted in to be discovered. So you have both discovery hitting it in the middle, and it feels like a marketplace, but it is much more of like a relationship building experience. So that's kind of how we do it.
As one of the last topics I wanted to talk about M&A. Yael, like we spent so much time over the last few years talking about Amazon aggregators, Shopify aggregators. Everyone was buying something. How has that market actually looked like last year, and what types of buyers are still buying this year?
Yeah, so there was a change obviously in the industry. When we're looking at buyers, I think that if you look at 2023, we've seen a diverse set of buyers actually this year. So if you look at all the transactions that we've done at Fortunet, I think that none of them were with these aggregators. The majority were either with strategic buyers or PEs. The aggregators that we were talking about a lot a couple of years ago, this year they were the majority was struggling with deal financing. Some of them were struggling with the integration after the acquisitions. We've talked about it during our first and second webinars of this series. We've seen even lawsuits against some of them. So there was a lot of action. There's now kind of consolidations among those aggregators. So even yesterday, right, there was With the Brands merged with Mentera, I think, and then Allsum bought Dwarf, Elevate, and Sellerex. So a lot of actions there. But if we look at the M&A space generally, then they're maybe a little less relevant. And that was a significant change this year. We did see that e-commerce generally, I think when we started Fortunet almost 6 years ago, it was it was quite an e-commerce acquisition was quite rare. Now it has become mainstream. It's an appealing acquisition, and these are good investment targets. So it's no longer uncommon to acquire an e-commerce brand. So a lot of changes. I think the market has matured. The businesses that we sell and that are generally sold have more history, more brand awareness, and their transactions are generally larger. Michal, do you want to maybe add on that?
No, I think that you described very well what we've been experienced. Maybe just to add on the recent development, and I can say that and very cautiously, I will say that the fourth quarter of 23 seemed to show some improvement in the pace of deals and the number of interested buyers per deal. And very naturally or simultaneously, we'll see more appetite among sellers to sell their business. Probably everyone feels that the market is reviving. So hopefully this will continue. So that's kind of if we're looking back at 23.
Amazing. And so to close this panel, this amazing panel for today, I have kind of one final question to each. Mike, we obviously talked a lot about influencers, content creators, affiliate networking, affiliate marketing. How much, how big of a percent can a brand expect to be driving sales through these kind of new creative ways of marketing?
Asking the tough questions, trying to generalize customer acquisition technique for the entire audience. I hate to give you this answer because it's like such a non-answer, but like it depends on the type of brand. Like I just want to reference what James said earlier on. It's like it's so much about experimentation, and you got to like test out a bunch of different things before you actually know. As far as time, though, I could probably give some advice on like how much time you should spend on this, because it is a recurring thing that you should just be very aware of, or you should participate in, especially in like the D2C world. And especially if you're running your business on Shopify, you're probably selling something physical, just making an overgeneralization. And if you're in one of the categories that Kaylee mentioned, home DIY, fashion, beauty, like cosmetics, those types of industries, like it's such a natural place for you to spend time because the formats are very much aligned. So if you're, and like electronics too, like it's such a great space to be in. And I would like, if I'm looking at the blend of customer acquisition, like the best one's probably still going to be paid because you get so much scale. And that's like where most people make their money, both the tech platforms, brands and aggregate, all that kind of stuff. Like it's just such a clear winner for customer acquisition. But like affiliate and influencer is moving way past the experimental budget. Generally, that's about 10% of customer acquisition. So it's moving past like that experimental kind of like budget that most brands allocate per year. And it's moving into like a defined customer acquisition method. So I don't know the exact percentages, but if I were to give you something, it would be probably more than that 10% as a function of time. So if your team is spending, 100 hours per week, then I would probably spend more than 10 hours on this type of thing per week. But again, different for every single brand. I know some brands that only acquire through affiliates and creators. And because they just have found that it's a reproducible channel, they don't need to rely on paid ads anymore. And it's creating more defensibility in their business, right? Because now they have access to this creator cohort and they have access to a customer cohort that they weren't able to access before. And their cost of content has actually decreased so substantially that they don't need to rely on in-house content creation any longer. So again, sorry for the non-answer answer, but it just basically gives maybe a framework for teams to understand like where the sophistication of affiliate and influencer marketing is today.
Got it. Kaylee, we talked about TikTok not being a replacement for commerce, but more it complements commerce. But it really, for now, seems to be kind of spontaneous buying, accidental buying, really perhaps most often low price type of buying. Like, is TikTok Shop, do you see it expanding into higher price points? Do you see it expanding into established brands? And do us seeing it, kind of us spending more of our wallets through TikTok Shop, not only for these spontaneous low price items?
I think the sky is the limit when it comes to opportunity size. I think TikTok Shop is finding its place right now. Is it a place to find low price items? Is it a place to find items you didn't know about before? Is it a place where you go back and you shop regularly? It doesn't really know yet. It's evolving as a marketplace, and eventually there is going to come a time where it finds its rhythm, and so do the sellers and the merchants and customers who are leveraging it as a platform. It is specific to a certain demographic. When you look at the demographics that are visiting TikTok in general, we know generally Gen Z visits TikTok. There is obviously other populations that do, but to a lesser extent. So will it become the next Amazon? Highly unlikely to reach the demographics that Amazon is able to achieve. I don't think there is a specific demographic for Amazon at the moment. I do think, though, that it is going to evolve over time and become more of a commonplace for shopping. Customers are going to get more comfortable shopping within TikTok Shop. Its services and solutions are going to evolve. Its logistics are going to get better. And over time, it will become more commonplace in the marketplace ecosystem.
Okay, so James, we talked so much about influencers. We talked so much about social media, content creation. I mean, Amazon is dabbling in some of those, but barely. Do you think Amazon sticks with its kind of proven model and remains as a sort of a boring commerce platform, or do you perhaps see it as experimenting more this year with influencers, with Amazon Inspire, with Amazon Post, with Amazon Live, and pushing more towards social commerce?
For as long as I've been working at Amazon or working with companies that sell on Amazon, Amazon has rarely looked at competitors and said, we need to pay attention to competitors and somehow adapt what we do because competitors are doing certain things. And yet here we are in the last year, and Amazon is definitely making some policy changes where, whether it's Temu or Shine, or whether it's some of the social media channels, where there seems to be a clear understanding that Amazon isn't best positioned to serve customers who seem to move towards some of those other channels. And so I think Amazon is playing catch up on some of these fronts, but I also don't know, and I don't think anybody really knows, how big is the risk here in terms of if Amazon keeps to its core business of we're here to offer low price, high selection, fast delivery on just about anything you need, but in a planned way. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon, but I think Amazon is probably on its toes, a little nervous, saying, we should at least figure out if there are ways of targeting customers that we haven't thought about in the past. I don't think they're going to do away with what they do really well today. I think it's worth Amazon continuing to do some of this innovating and testing out to see if they find something that works. Amazon Posts, they tried Amazon Live, 3 years ago, and gosh, I don't think I ever saw more than 12 people on an Amazon Live event. But the good news is Amazon goes out, they try things out, they look at the data, they figure out, okay, how do we adapt? How do we come up with a new option or a new way to target customers? I'm giving you a very long-winded answer to your question. I think Amazon will continue to evolve. What's different, though, is Amazon, I think, is paying a lot more attention to what's going on with other companies that are better serving some of these customer segments.
Okay. I think ultimately my takeaway from this hour is that just keep experimenting. There's new ideas, there's new trends, there's new strategies, there's new practices, but there's no one strategy to rule them all. And I think for any merchant and brand, it makes the most sense just to try all of them, just invest some effort into as many of them as possible and understand what works uniquely for your brand, uniquely for your category. So to close this webinar, I'm gonna kind of hand the mic back to Michal, as well as ask her to perhaps give us sort of an outlook of what we can expect in M&A once you're successful as a brand, what you can expect this year. Should you sell? Can you sell? For how much you can sell, and who would be the buyer for your brand?
Yeah, so I think that in continuance to what we've mentioned already about what we've seen in 2023 and in the last quarter, we hope and believe that this trend will continue and that the market is getting back to a more active market. Probably this is supported by interest rates, which at least are not expected to be increased, and maybe potentially they will go down. So this will inject more energy into the market. Also, the recession, which was a big threat, is kind of questionable, and you hear different views about whether there is a recession, there will be a recession, but altogether it seems that we see growth, even if to a lesser extent. And also the stock market seems to be with positive performance. So all of these are kind of backwinds to investments altogether. And e-commerce is probably one of the most attractive places to invest in. So we believe that with this and with the first signals shown already in Q4, we should see a healthy market going forward. Another point to remember is that the e-commerce space is very much decentralized, and this is a market that calls for consolidation. So this should continue, and we see different kind of investors and buyers that are looking to consolidate, whether these are strategic players gathering different brands of a specific vertical under their management, or generalist e-commerce platforms, or aggregator of different kinds, whether or not they wish to call themselves this way. So we believe that this will continue. As of multiples, the mismatch between sellers and buyers' expectation, or sellers' expectations to valuation and buyers' willingness to pay a certain multiple, kind of creates a bit of a stagnancy in the market, which we see now being released by a bit of a growth or improvement in the multiples. And we see, as mentioned already, a variety of multiples that can be between very low multiple to businesses that are not strong enough, or even businesses that will not be able to be sold at all, up to very healthy multiples. So it can vary between 2 times over the EBITDA up to 3, 4, 5 times over the revenue. All depends on the vertical, the performance of the business, the competitive advantage, and the feasibility of the brand. So that's something for everyone to explore. I think that my takeaways from this very interesting conversation today, and these are also relevant to M&A, to the ability to sell a business, is that that at the end of the day, we're talking about brands. So the perception of brand, this is something that should be kept on being explored by everyone who manage a brand, and whether to add value, as James related to it, or to build your community, as Cabilly referred to it, or develop your own system to partner with creators through Shopify. Thinking as a brand, looking to establish a business as a real brand with brand identity, this will add the most value into a business when looking to exit it, and not to mention, of course, the profits which should come with the ongoing management of it. So these are things that should be further explored. And it was also nice to see that there are still places where e-commerce sellers can be early adapters. So if TikTok is the new, potentially a new marketplace, let's say, maybe what Amazon used to be 10 years ago could be this TikTok. So TikTok and Meta, etc. And we have some nice success stories, but I will not. I believe that we're not left with enough time. So that's from me. And with that, I want to thank everyone for this, for the time here, and for sharing from everyone knowledge and experience. I think it was fascinating, and of course, thank you also, Joe, for leading this webinar this way. And if anyone has some closing remarks, maybe that's the time. And if not, just we can just say thank you to everyone.
I think that's all. Thanks everyone for your time. If anyone has follow-up questions, you know where to find us. And I think install TikTok and let's meet there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.